Steve Hildreth, the instructor for the course, and for one of the labs you are required to identify a series of rocks. And one of the kits you purchase for this course will look similar to this and will have a series of rocks in it. And there will be three different types: igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks, and sedimentary rocks. They're all mixed up inside the rock kit, and using the information in your lab manual, you'll be required to identify the rocks and come up with their names. Now, this is a little more complicated than when you were identifying minerals, in that there's three different types of rocks, and they each have separate things to look for when you identify them. So, for example, igneous rocks. In your lab manual, after the section on minerals, you'll get to igneous rocks. And you can read about them. When you get into textures of igneous rocks, you'll get into kind of a specific terminology. It sounds kind of funny. Phaneritic, pegmatitic, aphanitic, porphyritic, vesicular, glassy. These are called textures of igneous rocks. So in your kit here, for example, this one is igneous rock. It has a glassy texture. It looks like glass. This igneous rock has what's called an aphanitic texture, and in your lab manual you'll see that means fine-grained. Fine-grained means the minerals inside this rock are so small you can't see them. This one is coarse-grained. You can see the minerals with the naked eye. That's called phaneritic, and so on. So using the textures, and also on this page of your lab manual, what types of minerals are inside the igneous rocks, you come up with their name. And this chart in your lab manual compares the textures of the igneous rock, phaneritic, aphanitic, glassy, with the types of minerals that are inside the rock. So what you have to do is, with an igneous rock, pick up the rock, figure out what kind of texture it is. Is it coarse grained? Is it glassy? And then, using the magnifying lens that came with your kit, look in here and identify the various minerals. Now, you've already identified the minerals in your mineral kit last week. But now you have to come up with them, name them, identify them inside this rock, and using this chart, along with the texture, come up with the name of the rock. And you can read more about this in your lab manual. Keep flipping, you'll get to a section on sedimentary rocks. You identify these in a different way. One thing that you do, and there'll be some sedimentary rocks in your kit here, is you'll look at the size of the particles inside the sedimentary rock. So, for example, sedimentary rocks have things like sand and mud inside of them, and those come in a very specific size range. This table in your lab manual tells you that silt, for example, is a certain size, in other words, real small. And sand, we all know how big sand grains are. Work your way up to boulders and gravel and things like that. You flip through and take a look at the different sections of different types of sedimentary rocks. This is the sedimentary rock chart in your lab book. And it's divided into inorganic sedimentary rocks, in other words, sands and muds, and then organic sedimentary rocks, or sedimentary rocks that are made up of dead critters. This is a sandstone. It's a bunch of small sand grains. This is a sedimentary rock. It's organic in origin. In other words, it's made up of a bunch of dead critters, in this case, a bunch of shells. So you're looking at your sedimentary rocks. You'll need to determine whether they are organic in origin, like this one, or this one, which is inorganic in origin. This is not quite sand-sized grains, a little bit bigger. And on this chart here, you'll be able to figure out what this is based on the size of the grains. The last group of rocks that you have are metamorphic rocks. You can read in your lab manual this section on metamorphic rocks. But what you'll be looking for are the textures and the compositions of the metamorphic rocks. Textures meaning, are there a bunch of layers in the rock, like this one, for example? Or, in the case of this particular rock, this one has what's called a non-layered texture. Anyhow, you have to read through them, and then using this chart, determine what kind of metamorphic rock you have based on whether it has layers, which is called foliation, or whether it does not have layers, which is called non-foliated. This is going to be a little more difficult to identify minerals in that there are 3 different types of rocks, and they each have their own criteria to identifying them. And I would expect it to take you a little bit longer to do.